Alright, so this is going to be one of my favorite sections of the Trident system tutorial, the group/stage variation of Trident. Now this version is incredible. It allows you to read the mind of, frankly, as many spectators as you want all at once. That's why I also call it the stage version, because this can work really nice for a stage performance. So this one is very similar to the propless framework. But the difference is we're going to be having everyone think of that word. So you're going to have everyone with the same word in mind, and then you're going to have 3 different people think of the different words. That takes a lot of the load off of the memory on the spectator, because now they each only need to remember 1 word instead of one person remembering 3 or 4. Now this one has the potential to get a little bit confusing, so it's very important that you stick to the script and iron things out very clearly. If you haven't watched the full tutorial for the propless variation, that's when I dive deep into the Trident system and break down every little piece, how to do the decoding, how to do the processing. All that is super important because I'm just going to touch on it very briefly in this video, so make sure you go watch that one first. So step 1, doing it for a group, getting them to think of the word. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. I don't like to say everyone think of a word in a category, because then people will get confused and keep thinking about the word that they thought of in the beginning. You want to do it one of 2 ways. You either want to have them come together as a group and decide on a word, which I also recommend not doing, because when you do that, people will bounce off each other, right? And someone will say, oh, let's just go for dog, and someone will say, oh, that's way too easy. Let's go for, Hadron Collider or something, right? It'll just make the word much, much more difficult if you kind of have people come up with a word together. So the best option is just pick someone, right? Say, look, I think me and you might have a good connection here, so I want to have you be the leader for this. So I want you to think of a single word object, something you can visualize that you can easily categorize. What do I mean by that? An elephant is a mammal, a hammer is a tool, and a banana is a fruit. So go ahead, think of that single word object and that category. So you say the same exact line, they have their object and their category. Now, you want them to get that word and category to all of the other people in the group. Depending on the circumstances, you could just have them write it down, but then you should just do billet work, right? If you're gonna have them write it down, you might as well do a billet peek. So if we're trying to keep this propless, where they never write it down, which is one of the strengths of the Trident system, leave the room, walk away, plug your ears, and just tell them, I just want you to now tell everyone else your word and your category, right? Of course, you're going to confirm they have the category first. Great, you have the word, yes, and you have the category, yes. I want you to go ahead and just tell everyone the word and the category. I'm going to leave, make sure there's no way I can hear it, but I want everyone in here to be in on this so they can all experience it together. So I want everyone to think of the word, the same word and the category. So now you leave, and now they all know it. The other thing you're going to say is, I also want you to assign 3 people as person 1, 2, 3. I don't want to know who it is, but I want everyone to know who's person 1, who's person 2, and who's person 3. Does that make sense? Yes. Now you leave the room. So the instruction is, I'm going to leave the room. I want you to tell everyone the object and the category, because I want everyone to be involved in this and be able to experience this. And then I also want you to assign 3 people as person 1, 2, 3. I don't want you to tell me who they are, but just make sure that everyone knows who's person 1, who's person 2, and who's person 3. You leave the room, they do that, and you come back. That scripting is so important because it really needs to be clear, and they need to do this properly. We are then simply going to perform the Trident system, execute it, but using person 1, 2, 3 for words 1, 2, 3. Now, I've toyed with ideas of doing this with your back turned and everything, so you don't know who's who, but the reality is you want to be facing them. The best method, the most surefire method, is when you're facing them and you can have that control over your audience and make sure that everything's going according to plan. So I come back in the room and I'm simply going to walk through the instructions of the propless variation, the exact same 3 lines. Just delivered like this. I say, all right, you all now have a word in mind. This word, this object, we're going to call your master word. So anytime I say the word master word, that's the word I'm referring to. We all also have a category in mind. And then 3 of you are person 1, person 2, and person 3. I don't know who's who, but I need you to remember which one of you are those people. Now we're going to play a game of word association. Obviously, I don't know how any of you think, so I'm going to have a couple of you, my person 1, 2, 3, think of completely random words, right, that are just going to be generated off prompts I give. Then I'm going to try to see if I can use those words to understand how you guys think and try something amazing. So I say, we're going to play this game of word association. I don't want to know who's person 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to give you each a separate instruction. I'm going to look at all of you, but I don't want you to give anything away. Person 1, I don't want you to start nodding when I'm talking about you. Keep it to yourself. myself. Okay, that's very important so that they don't give anything away. Now I deliver those 3 prompts. I say, okay, person 1, whoever you are, and I scan the room, do you know your category, the category that we all have in mind? I want you to think of anything else that fits that category and put that word in your head. And then I say, keep repeating this word. This is the word I really need you to remember from our word association game. So they're gonna keep repeating that word, and you just say, keep repeating it. You say, now person 2, you know our master word? I want you to think of the first letter of that word and think of a nice interesting word that starts with that letter, and then keep repeating that word in your head. They now do that, and you say, great. Keep repeating it. Now person 3, I just want you to jump to the second letter of the master word. Whoever you are, person 3 only, jump to the second letter of your master word and just think of a brief word that starts with that letter and repeat that word in your mind a bunch of times. And there you've got it. Now each of those 3 people, you don't know who, but 3 people are thinking of 3 different words. So then I say, look, at no point do I ever want you guys to say the master word out loud. I want the 3 people, my person 1, 2, 3, again, I don't want to know who's who, but just raise your hands. If you're person 1, 2, or 3, all 3 of you raise your hands. Now you'll have 3 people raising their hand, and you say, great. Now the 3 of you have a different word in mind. No one else knows what they are, and it's purely generated off the way that you think and process information. Now, if you were to just tell someone that word you're thinking of, obviously they couldn't know anything about what you're thinking, but I'm going to try to use those different words to see if I can figure out how each of you process information and try to see if I can do something pretty cool. That's how I kind of lead up into it. Now I say, person 1, 2, 3, I want you guys to tell me your word, not your master word, but your word from the word association game. Go ahead, tell me your word, and I point at one of the people with their hands up. I don't know who it is. They know I don't know who it is, but they'll tell me their word. And I say, go ahead. I want you to tell me the word from the word association game, not the master word. Never say that out loud. Which word did you have? Which word did you have? Which word did you have? I like to have all 3 of them say it right away so I can begin processing right away. Now I have the 3 words, so I'm looking for my short word, I'm looking for my interesting word, I'm doing the processing like I explained in the prop list video, and then I'm going to deliver some readings about each of them. And this is great with this because they have each a different word. It's a lot easier for them to remember, and now I can deliver a reading about each of them while I'm doing my processing, so it gives me a lot of time. Let's say they went, whale, uni, Hilton. I say, okay, let me start with you. So you went for uni, so that tells me you're a little bit more of a critical thinker. You like to think a little bit deeper about things. Okay, and you, what was the word you went to? And it's perfectly logical for me to ask them if I happen to forget, right? Because I'm going to give a reading. Hilton. Okay, Hilton. That's a little more out there. That's something a little interesting. I don't know what you meant by that, but I do think you're someone who likes to think a little bit more obscure than most. And finally, yours was whale. Okay, this is something a little bit more inside the box. You tend to be someone who goes with the flow a little bit more. Interesting. So now I have a good sense about how all of you think. Now the interesting thing is all of you are thinking of a master word. No one's written it down. No one's ever said it out loud. And I want to see if I can try to pick up on this master word. And now I can read everyone's mind, right? I know they're all thinking of the word human, and I can deliver it as a verbal reveal, and everyone can react. I can do a nice, imagine the size of this object. Oh, this thing's rather big. Hold on. In fact, it's like... Is that human, right? Like, get really into it, have a really nice theatrical reveal, and everyone can respond to it. On stage, you can get the whole audience involved, and it's really, really fantastic. Do a billet reveal, and when you turn it, everyone's gonna know the word, and they don't have to say it before you. So this is just a beautiful system, a great way to do group mind reading, and it really just helps streamline the propless version because there's so much less memory work involved for the spectator, which is fantastic. Now, when it comes to stage, you can still do this very easily. I would bring up like 4 people on stage, have one of them think of the word, have that person tell the other 3. You can get really theatrical with like headphones so you can't hear it. You could have them play a game of telephone and whisper it to the person in the first row, and they whisper it all around the audience. So now the whole audience knows the word. You could do it with writing down. Again, then why not just use like an impression board or something? So I try to avoid the writing it down. There's lots of ways you can get that word out into the audience, or at least the 4 people on stage. So person 1 thinks of it, Person 2 is then going to think of your category word. Person 3 is going to think of the first letter word. Person 4 is going to think of the second letter word. So you get everyone involved. You have them say their words out loud. You do a nice little reading. Then you can read everyone's mind at once, which is really awesome, really cool. And there's a really nice theatrics of you covering your ears, blindfolded off in the corner. And you can really kind of play into that while they're doing it. Another idea with some really cool dual reality where you can have instruction cards written out for your 3 people who will be thinking of the word. So you'd have, instruction cards, and it would say, think of a word in the same category as the one you're thinking of and write it down here, right? This one says, think of a word that starts with the same letter as your master word and write it down here. And then there's a blank line on each of these, right? And then the third one says, think of a word that starts with the second letter of your master word and write it down here. And you have another line. Now, these can get handed out. You can show them, you can just flash the back sides, show they're blank, and you say, look, I'm gonna have each of you just write down a random word on this page. You can cut your mic, or you can just kind of point out the instruction, but you're just basically doing a dual reality. So you hand it to each of them, and then you say to the audience, you are all thinking of a word, you are all thinking of a master word in a category. Now we're gonna play a game of word association. I'm gonna give you these cards. I want you each to write down a random word on these cards, and you can just point out the instructions. And now they simply are gonna read the instructions and write down that random word on the line. And then you have a beautiful dual reality of, okay, each of you wrote down random words, completely random. And you say, look, I don't want to know who's who, but go ahead, this person, just tell us which random word you chose and you wrote down. And they'll say it. Which random word did you choose? Which random word did you choose? And now it seems like you never even gave any restriction, any instruction, and the words have nothing to do with the original master word, right? If you kind of dual reality with the billets there, where you have the instructions pre-written and you just say, here, go ahead, write down a random word, point out the instructions in the line, give it to them, just write down, random word, and then when you deliver it to the audience, you've each written down a random word. Which word did you write down? Which one did you write down? You can also mix up these billets, but just know which order you're giving them out in. So now you know exactly who has which word. And that's exactly the way I would do it on stage. I wouldn't deal with the decoding. I would just hand this person billet 1, this person billet 2, this person billet 3 after seemingly mixing them. And now I know exactly whose word is whose. I can still have them tell me in a random order. I say, person 2, you tell me your word. Person 1, you tell me your word. Person 3, but I know who's who. I know which word is the category and which is the first, which is the second letter. Makes the whole thing much easier, the whole processing. And to the rest of the audience, the words they said were completely random. They had nothing to do with the master word. So you get this really beautiful dual reality when you're doing this for stage, and then you can proceed to have one of the cleanest word reveals and pieces of mind reading that I think you can do. So hope you guys like this variation. It's a lot of fun.